Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Might Lead Aspire session this Friday. Today we have a wonderful guest ahead of us, and Anthony Hannon is a close friend, and he's actually a board member of Minorities in Cybersecurity. So it's awesome to have him here tonight to just chat. This is our fireside chat series. So, on the mic with Mr. Anthony Hannon, who I know well, but I'm going to interview him and have a little chit chat. Let me get my questions. I even prepared with questions, and that's saying something because I don't
Yeah.
prepare for anything. That's saying a lot.
Yep.
But I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself before we get into the content of what we have today. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pleasure to be here. Thanks again for the invitation. I'm Anthony Hannon. Current role is head of cyber advisory services with Mass Mutual. Been with them for about 8 years. Prior to Mass Mutual, worked for Raytheon down in Dallas, Texas, near Mary's neck of the woods. Started out with them as an intern when I was finishing up grad school, and then did well enough there. Was able to get a job with them in their security operations center. Originally from Southern California, went to school at South Virginia University in Rhode Island. That's how I got hooked up with Raytheon. Originally was planning on going to law enforcement, so I was flying back and forth, taking California Highway Patrol, I think Riverside Sheriff's Department, San Diego Police Department, and I think Santa Barbara was the other one. So I was finishing up my undergraduate degrees and requirements, finishing my graduate requirements. Like I said, flying back and forth. But one of the requirements for grad school was the internship. So that's how I got hooked up with Raytheon. And really, the best thing that happened to me was both of my managers at during that internship were former law enforcement officers. So one was a Rhode Island state trooper, and the other one was a corrections officer. So I'm telling them, what my plans are, and plan on going back home to California and joining one of those departments. And I remember specifically Ken Bell. He said, you have a knack for this, right? Obviously, it's early on. I had never been, done anything really from a cybersecurity perspective, let alone a computer science perspective. He said, I can tell you have a knack for this. I can tell you're a hard worker, so you should really try to give this cybersecurity thing a try. And if you still have that call into law enforcement, I was 22 at the time. After a year or two, I'm still young. I can go into law enforcement and have a career there, but decided to jump into it and take Ken's advice, take Brandon's advice, and it worked out. And I'm glad that I did that. So it was the best thing that happened to me. Having those two guys as my managers, but also my mentors. And to this day, I still talk to them.
well, that's great. So what was your first role?
My first role
At,
was a security operations center analyst. So like I said, I did well with that internship. And even in the internship, I'll talk a little bit about that first. So we split time with Raytheon and then some of the smaller defense contractors in the area. So for anybody that's familiar with Rhode Island and specifically Newport, Rhode Island, there's a large Navy base there in Newport. It's where they do a lot of their officer trainings. So obviously there's a presence kind of where the military is, where defense is. You're going to have some of these defense contracting companies right around them. So Raytheon has a big office in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, which is 2 towns over. And then there's a bunch of smaller defense contracting companies in the area. So my year, when I was finishing up grad school, what they were doing was first time they did a program where we're splitting time with Raytheon with their security intelligence team, and then the other rest of the time we were with one of the smaller companies in the area. So there was 5 of us in total. I was partnered up with a company called MiC. And essentially what we're doing is helping them understand their attack service. What does their digital footprint look like? If attackers can get in, what are they going to go after? The benefit from the program for Raytheon was Raytheon will get these large contracts right from the government, but they subcontract out to some of these smaller defense companies for specific areas of the contract or what have you. Now, Raytheon has better defenses, right, than a MiC or some of these other companies, but to a threat actor, it's all the same, right? They're accessing the same information. They're subcontracting right off of that larger contract. So they're going to go after the MiCs of the world versus, banging their head against the Raytheons of the world, right? And so from a security intelligence perspective, they're saying, hey, we can understand some of these third parties, right, that we're engaging with if we get some free labor. And it was unpaid internship in the door, right, sitting in with these companies and kind of reporting back. And then the smaller companies get somebody that's focused on security for a little bit, right? For the duration that we were there. So I kind of played that role, looking at the attack surface stuff for that summer. But then, like I said, yeah, did well in the internship. First role was as a SOC analyst. That was really when the work really started, right? Because like I said, I had no really hands-on technical background. So I had to learn very quickly. So I was actually just talking to some students at UMass Boston this week. What I would do is I would look at our ticketing system, and our ticketing system was pretty good, where it went back to 2009 at the time, so about 4 years of information and data. And I would just look at old tickets, look at tickets from Brandon, look at tickets from Ken, look at tickets from some of the senior analysts that I was now working with, and I would just pepper them with questions. Hey, why did you do this on this ticket, or and why not this? Because that's what I would have done, and why am I wrong, right? And so it just constantly bugging them, right? And I'm sure they got annoyed, but they understood that I was trying to learn, right? I was trying to contribute. And even one of the senior analysts, Jeff Ellis, who really like helped me out quite a bit. I was able to hire him at MassMutual 2 years ago, right? So I was able to give back to what he did for me years ago. But did well enough there that I was promoted, and I use that term in quotes because I got more responsibility, but no bump in pay or anything else like that, to team lead after about 7 months. And so, all that hard work of like going back and spending my free time going into tickets, learning as much as I could, really did pay off because, I demonstrated to the manager that I could handle that. So, now I'm
Okay, so
reviewing other
wait,
tickets on
stop,
this.
stop, stop. I
Yeah,
want to draw on that
yeah,
because,
yeah,
of course, these are aspirers. These are
yeah,
people that are looking to get in the space. And so I often tell, because you're a board member, we have the apprenticeship program. We have,
yep,
now 80 something plus apprentices. And
yep,
they look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them research, 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 right? And so I want you to point out, I just want to make a point of
sure,
saying, you didn't have any hands-on technical ability. You were going into law enforcement. You were asking a lot of questions and going back and doing research and learning and learning and learning,
yeah,
not necessarily hands-on. You were just trying to understand what it is and what decisions and why those decisions were made. And
right.
that's the inquisitive nature that has to be in this space.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely 100%. Because I had nothing else, right, to fall back on. During that time I had taken my Network Plus and Security Plus. I got those certifications, but we all know that when you get certified doesn't mean that you actually know what that stuff is, right? And so that was just a starting point for me. But yeah, I had to have that inquisitive mind. I still have that mindset today, right? Because I treat every day, as a learning day. And again, one of the UMass students this week asked me, how often are you learning new things? And I tell them every single day I'm learning new things because I have to, right? We all have to, especially in this industry.
Yeah, that is very, very valid. And understanding that, it's constantly learning. You have
Yeah.
to constantly learn. So take us through Anthony Hannon, young Anthony Hannon, SOC 1 analyst to where you are today.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, a lot of learning up front because, and really the biggest thing was one, I wanted to prove myself, right? But I also wanted to prove Brandon and Ken and the others that helped me get that job right because they put their necks on the line. Again, a kid that no computer science background, no technical background, and did well in internship. That was it, right? So, like I said, did well enough there. Was able to step into a team lead role. Now I'm providing like level 2 support, reviewing other people's tickets. Escalating things up to our incident response team, reviewing metrics, coming up with key risk indicators, a whole 9 yards, right? And so taking more of a step into that leadership role and some of the formal things that come with that position there. So did well enough there, but I kind of felt after about 2 years or so that not that my development had maxed out, it just wasn't moving as quickly as I had wanted it to. And I am ambitious. I fully admit that. And I know some people like to take their time. I want to go, go, go. And, every 2 years I'm trying to do something new, even if it's just like taking on another team or jumping into a new domain. So I kind of hit that mark. And a buddy of mine, Matt Brady, who I had done the internship with, he and I were in grad school together at Salve. He had moved. He also got a job at Raytheon for a bit. He had moved on to MassMutual, and so he and I had stayed in touch. He let me know that there was a position open with their incident response team. And now, over the last 2 years, I've gained some of those technical skills that I was lacking before. I have a deeper understanding of what it means to be a SOC analyst, what it means to do incident response, some of the forensic work, right? in addition to some of the coordinating of response activities, right? Because it goes beyond the technical and investigation and all that stuff. We're talking about communications, legal, compliance, giving stuff to our executive leadership team, things like that, right? So I jumped at the opportunity to join Mass Mutual. And part of the reason too is my now wife, girlfriend at the time, we had met at Salve. She moved down to Texas with me. She had wanted to be back closer to home in Massachusetts. So, here's a win-win for us to get back there. So was able to get the job. When I interviewed, I was here in Massachusetts less than 15 hours. Kid you not, I got here at like midnight, got to the hotel, had the interview at like 8 a.m. and was out like on my flight by like 10. I was able to get the job in 2016, started out instant response, really jumping in again, like learning more about the coordinating and less about the like, I'm the one reviewing the logs and stuff. Still had a piece of that, but I was able to partner very closely with our legal team, our compliance team, the leadership team from different business units. And so it was kind of trial by fire, but I think that it contributed a lot to my growth in my accelerated development and career trajectory at Mass Mutual too, because I was able to get exposed to a lot of these leaders, right, and prove myself and demonstrate value. So that was a huge win for me there. Um, I have an affinity for security intelligence again because I had that internship there and maintained good relationships with Brandon and Ken. So there was an opportunity with Mass Mutual to jump back onto the intelligence team and out of incident response. So I was able to join that team. Again, there's a passion of mine at Intel, and so reading those reports, really understanding the threat actors, tactics, techniques, procedures, their motivations. How do they view Mass Mutual as a company? How do they view financial services as an industry? Where are weaknesses? All that stuff, right? So, kind of had more of a fire lit underneath me, and again, learning, continuously along the way. Um, and then we had a leadership change with CISO. We've had many, as we all say, unfortunately. But so I stepped in as a security intelligence director as people were shuffling around. Also oversaw our security operations center, the digital forensics incident response team, e-discovery, and our offensive security team. So again, really just thrown into the fire. And my mindset there was, in hindsight, I'm pretty open about this, even with people at Mass Mutual. I probably wasn't ready for a formal leadership position at that time. I had only had a total of 4 years of like corporate experience, right, and 4 years of cybersecurity experience. And I already said I was a step behind, right, in terms of the technical knowledge. But with everything that was going on, I felt that I wanted to be a little bit closer to the steering wheel, right, and kind of help leadership, despite the mistakes that were being made, kind of help leadership kind of steer the ship in a better direction. And I felt I had a little bit more power doing that by taking that role and helping some people out because we had some attrition, right? And so I'm looking around at the really top talent that we have, and I'm like, hey, I can alleviate some of this, right? I can make this a little bit better if I step into this role. And I stepped into the role again, had the security intelligence team for about a month or two, and then I got all these other teams underneath me too. So again, trial by fire. Um,
Yeah, and it sounds
yeah,
like ambition, right?
yeah,
And
yeah. I didn't shy away from
it
it.
an acceptance of the
Yeah,
unknown, right?
yeah,
And that we have that in common. We talk about that often, where you're betting on yourself, right? And it's
yep,
like you've proven that you have the fortitude and people believe in trusting you as a leader. I didn't
right.
mean to cut you off. I just wanted
No,
to
no, no, you're fine. Cut me off because I will just run through. Cut me
no,
off.
keep going.
Um,
We got plenty of questions, but go ahead.
so yeah, so stepped into that role, had those teams there. Um, I believe firmly that I was able to make an impact and, like I said, keep some of the talent there, help make some of the better decisions that otherwise wouldn't have been made during that transition time. And then I had the opportunity to step in as a business information security officer for our data science organization, and then also heading up our software security group for application security. Did that for it was pretty quick. I want to say maybe 5 months before I was presented with the opportunity to join CU Action for Racial Equity. So what that program is, and that's how Mary and I met, is Mass Mutual had signed on with PwC and I want to say about 70 plus other companies to advance racial equity, specifically for the Black and African American community. So this program had started back in 2017. Then it was called CEO Action for um, diversity. And so what the mandate there was for all those companies that had signed on was looking internally to their companies and saying, how are we advancing our diversity, equity, inclusion goals, initiatives, and work there, right? But then 2020, George Floyd's murder and everything, all the unrest that was going on there, that group of CEOs came back together and said, look, we got to do more. It's not enough for us to look internally for our own companies and share how we're handling diversity internally. We have to do more for the Black and African American community externally, right? Because we have the CEOs, right? They have Black and African American employees who, yes, they are employees within their four walls of MassMutual and whatever business that they work for. But I'm also a Black man, right, out in the world that dealing with this stuff, right? And however I bring that into the workplace or not, and however I choose to, those CEOs saw an opportunity like we have to do more for these people, right? As people, not just as employees. And so what MassMutual did was they offered up the program, 5 employees, 6 total. We had like a manager that also joined, Pia Flanagan, who was our at the time chief of staff to our CEO, myself, and then 4 other individuals for 2 years working on CEO Action for Racial Equity. So what we did there was looking at opportunities to help out and advance the Black and African American community in education, economic empowerment, healthcare, and I want to say it was public safety was the fourth one. So we were grouped up with members from other companies. Again, 70 plus companies in total. I want to say we had about just under 200 people collectively. Again, this is during 2020, so COVID, still a big thing. So we're all working remote. We're melding together all these different cultures. We've got the MassMutual culture, PwC culture, other Fortune 100, cultures that these people are bringing to the table, right? But all for the greater good, and we're all, working towards the same goal there. So I was hooked up within the education platform to start out with, working specifically with how we can advance partnerships between these companies and historically Black colleges and universities. So I really enjoyed that. I still work closely with our HBCU program here at MassMutual. And really the biggest thing that I found powerful was talking with these HBCU presidents and hearing that, they'll take the check, right? Just like anybody would take the money, right? And they can put that money in good use. But what they really want is a partnership, right? They want MassMutual, speaking for ourselves, to show up and keep showing up and not walk away, right? Again, they'll take the money, but they want to see things like apprenticeships. They want to see internship opportunities. They want MassMutual's subject matter experts to come tell us about our cybersecurity program. What are we doing wrong? Come teach, right? Things like that. And so being able to help bridge some of those gaps there was very meaningful to me. With MassMutual, we were able to partner with and still partner with Hampton University and North Carolina A&T. So again, take a source of pride for me to be able to hook the two companies up, or the MassMutual and the two universities up with us. And now we got a partnership going and a huge commitment there, not only from a financial perspective, but also from that partnership perspective.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
okay, so I'm gonna stop you there
yeah,
before
I
we
figured
move
you
on.
would.
Yeah, because I want to talk about 2020 and now 2024.
Yeah.
So, and I'll have to send you the video of what happened to me this week. But just let's say that there was an interaction between myself and someone else down here in Texas where they hit my vehicle, and then when transpiring through the conversation, he was a lot more aggressive than I was.
Mhm.
Asked me, was I illegal? And so, and then with the Supreme Court's decision, and many of these states are now interacting or they're passing legislation that makes diversity a bad word,
Yeah,
right? Or makes it so all of the work that you've done can you give me a sense of you know, how you feel about what's going on right now in regards to the attack on DEI?
yeah. I mean, obviously, don't feel good about it, but if anything, it kind of inspires, probably the wrong word, but it motivates me, right, to keep fighting that fight in the world that I live in now when it pertains to cybersecurity, right? Obviously, being a part of MiC, and doing some of these other things to give back. And really, to me, it's about educating people, right? Because about what diversity actually is, because it gets twisted, right, in terms of how we think it should mean and what it actually means. I'll give an example, a real example, right? So, talk about George Floyd's murder, and I was overseeing the security intelligence team still, and so we do like regular leadership briefings, and so it was about a week and a half after George Floyd's murder, and team's ready to go. You know, we're scheduled to on the agenda to give this briefing, and that morning, chief of staff for our CISO pings me on Slack and says, "Hey, our Jim wants to hold off on the security briefing that we were going to start out with. He wants to discuss, you know, the events that's going on in Minnesota first, and then so if you could just tell your team, hang back for 30 minutes." So I said, okay. So in my mind, immediately, I'm like, he's going to ask me to say something. Just because at the time, and I still am now, the only black person on the leadership team, right? On the senior leadership team. And so I'm like, he's going to ask me to say something. And I'm freaking out. I'll be honest with you. I'm like, I'm going to say I got food poisoning or I got sick or I'm not feeling well. I'm just not going to show up because I don't want to talk. Or if he asks me, I'm not going to say, I'm just not going to say anything, right? I'm good. But in that, after an hour or so, right, I'm like, you know what? Here's an opportunity for me to educate these other white people, and they were all rest white people, right? Because whether it's a good thing or not, or whatever you think of it, I may be the only black person that they interact with on a regular basis, right? They don't understand how something that's happened in Minnesota wasn't impacting me at that time, right? Like, how could it, right? So step into that meeting and, you know, just like I expected, Anthony, what do you have to say about this, right? And so what I focused on was again about educating yourselves, right? Understanding like I'm crying, right? Like see how I am hurt by by these events, right? Understand and educate yourself about what is going on. Understand when Roger Cranner, our CEO, is talking about our diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, that it's not just a check the box thing, right? That we need to take it seriously. And we have KPIs about performance, you know, with performance indicators on DEI. It's not just again, not just checking that box or hitting a quota. It's being meaningful, right? And being intentional about what we can do. And so I think that was pretty eye-opening. And, you know, like you talked about some of the court rulings and just some of the ignorance really is what it is around DE&I is it just motivates me, right, to be that shining light and to give back and give an example, right, of what you can do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we do here. And I'm tearing up a little bit because I remember that pain as well.
Yeah.
And no, I didn't have to talk. And so I can only, but I remember being the only,
Yeah.
in every, I've started my career in corporate as an executive, so it was often that. But
Right.
I just remember, not just George, but Brianna, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
as well as Ahmad, and all of these things just back to back to back. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
you mean to tell me that we're all locked in the house, yet you still feel comfortable? Because I used to jog in 2020.
Right.
That's the only time I got outside was when I
Yeah.
was exercising. And it got to a point, well, for those that don't know, Miss Mary's always strapped. But it got to the point where I was jogging with my gun
Yeah.
because it was night. I'm jogging and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, it's completely dark. And there were a couple of times that I felt, because I'm in the street, whatever, on the little bike path thing, that I saw a couple of cars where at least I felt there was a couple of cars like literally veering
Hmm.
towards me. And so
Hmm.
I felt
Yeah.
endangered in that capacity. And so thank God I was not in corporate
Yeah.
America in early 2020. I wasn't later on. But I mean, you have to understand, as a minority, especially when you are the only one, you do
Yeah.
have the responsibility to educate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may not like it,
Yeah.
but the only thing that's going to change is if you actually share,
Right.
your experiences,
Yeah.
right? And that's part of it in these spaces. I
Yeah.
remember, people, oh, can I touch your hair? All of these things that happen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Anthony, it's
Yeah.
not about me, it's about you. All these
No,
things that
get it.
happen, it it does weigh on you, but it is a responsibility. It should motivate you. It should motivate. It motivates me. We have that in
Yeah.
common to
Yeah.
educate. So how do you, or how did you, because you lead a team, how big is your team now?
So my team now is about 20 people. We had some recent org changes, so yeah, about 20 people now.
Okay, so 2020, how big was it?
Um, about 10, 15, I want to say. Back then,
Okay, so how did that conversation, happen with
yeah.
you and your team? I would be curious.
Yeah,
Curious.
it's kind of the same approach, right? Again, is like sharing my own experiences there so they can understand how this impacts me, right? Because I think what gets lost in people, and don't get me wrong, we all have our stuff, right? That we have dealing with our personal lives that we bring or don't bring to work. But making sure that people understand, like, hey, I put a mask on when I come to work, right? Like, this is happening, this is impacting me. I think about my kids, right? And like, I'm myself, and I can take care of myself, and I've been through it. Like, I understand how the world may view me, but my kids don't, right? And so then I start thinking about that, and that starts weighing on me, right? But I still got a briefing to do. I still got a meeting to lead, right? I still got deadlines to meet and all this stuff, and so just making sure that people understood, at the time, like it's okay to not be okay for a little bit, right? And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to be vulnerable, right? And share some things just like I was being vulnerable so that people understand, not to have sympathy on you, but to understand what is going on around that person or what is going on around you. And then give them resources, right? Hey, here's this book. Stand from the beginning. I always recommend that book to people by Ibram X. Kendi. Go read that book because it really talks about how Black and African American people were viewed from the get-go, right from the jump, right? White people were looking for any reason they could to keep slavery a thing, right? Even back before America was founded, they see Black people in Africa like, oh, of course they're Black. They were meant to be in the sun, right, and be working, and that's why they're Black. So it makes sense, right? Because it was in the Bible, it makes sense, right? So using every other excuse, but then they find the Inuits in Alaska who are dark, and like, that's not right. It's cold here. We got to find another reason, right? And so again, that book is very educational, and so I would always recommend just different resources to people so they understand, like, okay, like I didn't realize I didn't realize it was like this. There was stuff that I didn't even know, right, from history, and so yeah, again, that's how I would do it, just being vulnerable with my teams and then giving them the resources and not mandating it, right? I'm not trying to force anything down, people's throats, but just giving them the resources, and just keeping it top of mind for them.
Yeah, and that's pivots as far as being a minority leader and you know having candid conversations and like you said being vulnerable to individuals to so they can see that no I'm not okay, but I'm not going to go and come in here and kill everybody. That's not
Right.
what I'm going to do, but I am hurting, right? And
Yeah.
so that is always an important part of
Yeah.
leadership is being transparent and honest about everything that you're going through to the extent that you feel comfortable. I think a lot of
Yep.
times underrepresented groups um, don't they see themselves as the only, but they don't take that opportunity, right? I
Yeah.
mean, some of the best conversations I've ever had were with white men that asked me questions. I had
Yeah.
someone ask me about my hair, and I'm like, okay, let's talk. Right. So let's have this conversation,
Yeah.
because black women in hair is a thing, right? And so having the conversation with them about that, I wanted those questions. Not
Right.
everybody feels
Right.
that comfortable, but I wanted because how else are we supposed to break down this whole
Yeah.
you know thought process on minorities and being in a leadership role if we don't express our own vulnerabilities at that time. So
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
we,
the same exact way. Like I welcome those questions too because it shows that that person is seeking to understand, right? As opposed to just having their own conceptions or misconceptions about Black women's hair or whatever it is. So yeah, welcome those.
yeah. So let's see what advice. Okay, switching a little bit out of the
Hmm.
DEI component and getting into what you do for us, which is teach the mentorship, coaching, sponsor type of
Yeah.
things. What would be some advice that you would give someone just starting out? Because, like you said, you didn't have a technical background at all, and
Yeah.
many of our apprentices do not, right? And
Yeah.
so, what what is the best advice? What piece of advice would you give them as they now seek to be in the cybersecurity profession?
Yeah, two things. So I'm sure people have heard the phrase, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." I never like that phrase because I feel like it diminishes. You still got to work hard, right? And so for me, two things is one, you got to work hard, but then two, you do need to network, right? You have to connect with people. So again, I go back to when I was in that internship. I studied for and took the Network Plus and Security Plus in 2 weeks. And it was just, I was reading the book and staying up late and getting it done, right? And so what my schedule looked like at that time over the summer was I would have my internship from 8 to 5. I was working as a doorman at a bar in Newport, and I would have to be there by 6. So I would have an hour a day, 6 to 2 a.m. And then from like 2 a.m. to maybe like 4 or so, I'm reading that book, and then I get a couple hours of sleep. And I did that for basically 6 days a week, right? I had a day off, like a random Wednesday or something like that, but to catch up on some sleep. But that's what I did. And then I made sure that I was still talking with Matt, still talking with Brandon and Ken on the networking piece to make sure that they understood, hey, here's all the work that I'm doing. Here's how I'm trying to get caught up, right? And make up for the lack of whatever technical knowledge that I didn't have. So I'm working hard and then I'm still talking with people, right? So that they can represent to the hiring managers or to the CISO at the time at Raytheon or whoever it might be that, hey, we got this guy who has some talent, right? Or has some potential at least. Let's give him a chance, right? He's going to show up. And then now it's on me to show up, right? And show out. And so you got to marry those two things up. So that's the two biggest things, the biggest piece of advice I can give is work hard, but then people got to know that you're working hard, right? Somebody told me that, what's the difference between a chicken and a duck? And why do we eat chicken eggs and not more duck eggs? Well, every single time a chicken lays an egg, the chicken's gonna let you know about it, right? Whereas the duck just lays an egg, goes on about his day. So you got to tell people what you're doing. You got to showcase yourself.
No, absolutely. So that gets into the little branding piece, but
Yeah.
hard work, research, ambition, networking.
Yep.
Those are some things that I'm taking away from what you're saying. So as, as it relates to your own career journey, right?
Yeah.
All of the things of those talking points that you made, which would you value more? Which tool out of your toolkit would you say has gotten
Yeah.
you further faster?
Um, Further, faster, probably working hard, honestly, especially because I've been able to move up and take some, leaps and bounds here at Mass Mutual. But the starter again was the networking and being connected because again, if Brandon and Ken and others weren't vouching for me, if Matt wasn't vouching for me to be at Mass Mutual, I don't know where I'd be. I'd still be a hard worker, right? So none of that changes, but they were kind of the impetus for that. And then it's just working hard. And so, yeah, I think the most important thing is working hard because again, it doesn't matter if people are recommending you or not. If you don't do the work, you're going to be out the door pretty quickly, right? And
Say that again to my apprentices. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, yeah. Again, you got to work hard. You will get found out fast, right? If you're not working hard, if you're not learning, right? If you're not demonstrating that you're trying to be ambitious, even if it is to, hey, I want to learn more. I want more opportunities to demonstrate what I'm learning, right? Think about education, exposure, and experience. I'm constantly talking with my manager and those around me about how can I get more experience? How can I get more exposure? How can I get more education opportunities, right? And so you have to be demonstrating that you got to be doing your job too, first and foremost, right? You got to be doing the things and meet your commitments, but take that extra step all the time.
And you mentioned that as far as education and learning. So when you are in the interview process, right? Let's say we when do you talk about educational, continuous education in the role, just for the apprentices' own sake? I have my own opinions, but I'm gonna let you share.
So you mean as far as like when I'm interviewing for roles or when I'm interviewing people?
When no when an apprentice, you put yourself in a of an entry level person, at what point in time
Got
do you talk to the employer about continuing education or career path?
It should be right away, in my opinion. Like you should be picky. Obviously, I understand people want jobs and want to get a foot in the door, but you also should be picky about where you land and where you end up because you have some companies there that just want you to. You're there to process tickets and nothing else, and you're not going to get those education opportunities, and it's on you. And to a certain degree, it is on you, right? Your own professional development, career development is your responsibility, but the company should be able to offer up something there for you as well. So, yeah, I expect bring it up right away, right? What opportunities you're going to give me, even if it's just internal, right? Internal development opportunities with so like MassMutual has a partnership with like LinkedIn Learning, so we get free access to that. Other programs, right, that might just be internal. If I get tuition reimbursements or reimbursements for books that I buy, so ask those questions. Don't shy away from it. Don't feel as though you need to prove something or be at a certain level before you're allowed to ask those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So if the audience, we have a good audience tonight. I don't know if there's anybody out there on YouTube. I'll look in a minute. But if you have questions, please drop them in the chat or drop them in the Q&A. I will continue to pepper Anthony. We can talk on all evening, but we
Yeah.
won't. We have about 20 minutes or so. Um, and I'm a stickler for time. So all that to be said, if you have questions for Anthony, please, please, please put them in the chat. But what I wanted to talk to you about in regards to mentorship, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned several times um, that you had individuals that mentored you in your career journey, and you do that in the Mike Builders course.
Yep.
Actually, tomorrow you
Yeah.
will be in the talking about
Yep.
mentors, coaches, and sponsors, and advocates, and what that looks like. How important would you say it is to be a mentor, for yourself, and then also to seek mentorship from others? And secondly, who in the relationship, right, is responsible for maintaining the relationship?
Yeah. Um, so very important, and I think it's very important for both being a mentee as well as being a mentor, is it's an opportunity to give back as the mentor, but as a mentee, it's an opportunity to learn, obviously, but there's only going to be so much that you can learn from a book. There's only going to be so much you can learn from taking a certification, all that stuff. You're going to gain some learnings from your own direct experiences and exposures. But if I want to be a CISO, right, I want to talk to a person who has been a CISO or who is a CISO now, because they will have gone through things that, again, is not written down in a book. There's some high level things that I can learn. Hey, these are some of the things you should consider as a new CISO. But I want to talk to Kim Jones, right? He's one of my mentors. I want to, hey, what was it like when you stepped into this role at a young age too, right? And so getting those learns from him, talking to Jim, talking to other CISOs, talking to other CIOs too. What do you expect in a CISO, right? As a CIO, because that's direct experience that they've been through. And so now they're passing it on to me. And as a mentor, I want to do the same thing to whatever degree I can to people in college, people trying to get into the cybersecurity industry, because I'd be remiss if I was not giving back, right? Because again, so many people helped me along the way. I'm not going to take that for granted, and so I want to give back to people too, right? And I think it's important representation as well. So that's why I'm involved with Mike. That's why I'm involved with some of these other groups that represent some of these underrepresented communities, because they can see me and say, hey, if he did it, I can do it. But how did he do it, right? And so now I can share that how and kind of my game plan, if you will, on how I got to where I'm at. As far as whose responsibility is it, I think it's the mentee's responsibility to make sure that that relationship is maintained. Beyond the whatever the agreement is for what that cadence is, what those meetings look like. I get a lot of requests to be people's mentors. My expectation is, hey, great, I'm happy to do it. Tell me why me, right? Like, what do I have? What experiences have I gone through that you are looking for? Because I may not be a good fit to be your mentor, right? And so that's on them to show up with that. And then they got to show up with questions or topics or things that they want to discuss. I've had, mentorship engagements where, we get on the phone and like, hey, how's it going? Going well. What do you want to talk about? Right. And so come to the table, like use me, right? Like be a sponge. You get that information. I do the same thing with my mentors, where I make sure that I come with an agenda. I make sure that I've done some research ahead of time. I've given them a heads up about what I want to talk about or situations I'm dealing with at work, to make sure that it's a productive conversation. And making sure that I stay in touch with them, not only from a formal, hey, we're going to meet every single month perspective, but if I see an article that I think is going to be helpful to them, hey, I was just reading this in Wall Street Journal or what have you, or here's what we're doing in Mike. We got this conference. I understand you got some new career individuals, whatever it is, right? I want to be able to give back as the mentee as well. So it's on the mentee, is my opinion on that.
Well, okay, we agree on that too. Um, no, and it really is because usually the mentor is usually busy. So Miss Mary doesn't really do a
Yes,
lot of mentoring because I'm a CEO and I'm out there. I
yes,
just I'm talking to each one of the new 45 apprentices individually, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
the
yeah,
thought process that I have a lot of time and so the ghosting thing, we're gonna talk about that
yeah.
because we and we'll get into this at the conference a little bit when we start
Hmm.
talking about what that does to your brand. But the trend in the younger generation, and I think I'm older than you, Anthony. I think you might be a
Yes,
millennial, right?
yeah, I am.
So yeah, okay. Yeah, embrace
Yeah,
that. Uh but you're an ambitious millennial, which is,
yeah,
saying a lot.
yeah,
But yeah, what I find is, for instance, we had 151 applicants for 100 slots for our apprenticeship program this
yeah,
year. We're only taking 100.
yeah,
At least 50 plus of them never followed up. And so when they ghost, give us your idea of what happens when you have a mentee or someone that is asking for your time but is inconsistent.
yeah. So I'm going through this right now, actually, and it's happened before too. So the both real world examples, but the current example I'm going through. So I won't name names, but I'm part of this other program locally across Massachusetts for, again, underrepresented communities for college students. And this program puts together a cohort of students. So the mentorship isn't one-to-one; it's a group of five individuals. That it's myself and then a junior mentor who also happens to work for Mass Mutual. And so it goes for 6 months, and we met for the first time in November, agreed on, hey, we're going to meet Tuesdays, the second Tuesday of every month from 5 to 6. If you can't make it, let us know. No big deal. Like if it's three or four of you, majority of the group, we'll find a new time, right? So let us know. So November session goes well. January session we had to move because we had some international students that were still out of the country. So it would have been like 4 a.m. if we did our normal time, get a couple people showing up, but then for February and March, just this week, is nobody. And February, actually, I take that back. February was one person, and she was very engaged with me and Victoria, the other woman that I work with, asking questions, getting a lot of value out of it, right? But then March, nobody shows up, and so I let the program manager like, look, you let me know how you want to handle this, but like I'm not going to be chasing these kids around, and because I'm busy, like I take time out of my day to do this after work hours, right, and things like that. So from my perspective, it's nothing personal. I don't get upset really. It's just I'm a busy person. If you're gonna ask me to dedicate an hour of my time a month, like I want people to show up. I've had other situations where it's a one-on-one mentorship where I'm on the call waiting on the Zoom, and 10 minutes into the call, oh, I had an emergency come through, which happens, right? It happens once. But then 2 weeks later, we reschedule, something else happens. And so I messaged the guy. I'm like, hey, look, man, I don't think you're ready for this, right? I don't think you're ready to have this mentorship relationship. You let me know when you're ready for this. And I kind of leave it at that. Now, if I see that person's name come through as like on an application, or they reach out to me, hey, I saw this opening up at Mass Mutual. Could you help me out? No, no, I'll be respectful, I'll be professional, but no, I'm not gonna put my name on or anything like that. So yeah, you really have to think about the branding. You have to think about what you are putting yourself out there. And you also have to keep in mind too, beyond the mentorship and mentee relationship is somebody is always watching. And I've learned that the hard way. I've learned that in a positive way too, right? When I did show up effectively and I showed up in a good way, but I didn't know anybody was watching. And then not kidding you, like 2 years later, so hey, I enjoyed or I appreciate the way you showed up with that incident from 2 years ago. I didn't know who that person was, right? But they were watching and they did not forget how I showed up, right? So you got to keep that in mind too. You got to be professional, understand things happen. And even for like the apprenticeship too, maybe those 50 people decided, hey, this isn't for me. Nothing wrong with that, but reach out and say that, right? Because that costs you nothing. The 2 minutes, right? Hey, decided to take a different career path, whatever it is, or I can't commit to the time. Nothing wrong with that, right? But you can't be ghosting
Mhm.
people and just not showing up. That's disrespectful.
It's disrespectful and they don't understand that the minority cybersecurity community is small. And once you
Yes.
burn one bridge, that person will never put their brand on the line for you. And what I would
Yeah.
tell, because I had the Mike Lead graduates actually interviewing for the apprenticeship program, and I said, y'all know me, so the question that you have to ask yourself, would you walk this person into your employer as a good candidate? And if
Right.
that answer is no, they probably aren't ready
Yep.
to do what it takes to be an effective person in this space. So
Right.
of course this is the Aspire session. So we're talking more entry level um and apprenticeships, but that even relates to, as we talk about it in the MiC community, builders, communicators, and directors. Your
Yep.
reputation goes as you go, and
Yep.
understand that you don't know who knows who.
Yep. And they will ask, like I asked too. Hey, I got this resume across my desk. I see you used to work together, right? Or you were at least at the same company. Do you know of this person? It is a small community. Cybersecurity is a small community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Okay. I
small.
have a question. It
Yeah.
says branding is critical. What are the core components to a strong brand for someone new to the field? Consistency, clear career goals, communication, question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm gonna let you take that one first, Anthony. What
So,
is the core competencies of a strong brand for
small
someone new
brand.
to the field?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, you need to know who you are, right? And how you're going to show up. And don't change who you are or like bend to other people's will or try to show up differently, right? There's a term. Anyways, context switching. Don't feel like though you need to be doing that because you're talking to somebody in a role or a position of authority than how you would talk to your own team, right, or your own peers, right? So understand who you are and make sure that you have that grounded, right? And then determine how you're going to be showing up and communicate, right, and how you're going to not brand yourself, but how you're going to showcase yourself, both in the way you verbally speak to people, your written communication, but also your work effort too, right? And so anything that you put your name on, you should be ready to defend, but also it should be 100% quality, right? You got to put your best effort in there. And then it's about how are you reaching out, how are you giving back to people, again, how are you communicating with those around you. Consistency, yes, how you're showing up consistently, how you do anything is how you do everything. Um, so yeah, I think I would focus on those areas there. That's what's worked for me is that, there's nothing beneath me. There's nothing that I won't jump on. There's things that I'll delegate, obviously, but again, I'm going to make sure that it's communicated and done effectively and given to the right people too, right? To make sure it's done because, whether like I have managers who will have direct reports that all report up to me, the buck stops with me, in my opinion, right? So if people 2 levels down don't do something, well, that's my fault. There's something that I didn't do right. I didn't communicate something effectively. I didn't stress the urgency. I wasn't clear in my instructions, whatever it is, right? So that's how I make sure that that's my brand is like ultimate like ownership and accountability and everything stops with myself.
Yeah, and I will say there's a difference in it. I've always distinguished between internal and external and branding, right? And
Yeah.
in my the consistency is key.
Yeah.
When you start talking about authenticity and being a leader, like Anthony pointed out, you don't want to jump from this person to being this person for this person for this person. Know what you know, and I tell the folks all the apprentices specifically all the time. No one's expecting you to know, so don't
Right.
lie, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
at the end of the day, you are where you are. You're going to get better. You're going to pursue
Yes.
things. Focus on the fact that you work hard, and unfortunately, the cybersecurity community has done professionals a disservice and always focusing on certification. So I get people,
Yeah.
oh, I got to get this cert, I got to get this cert, I got to get this cert. And then we have college students, because I used to be a college professor, oh, my degree means nothing because I had to do this, 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 and this. And it's like the industry has you chasing your
Yeah.
tail when the reality is just understanding the fundamentals. I have people coming to me all
Yeah.
the time in the apprenticeship program. I want to be a pen tester. I'm like, okay, no,
Yeah.
stop,
That's
stop,
yeah. Yeah.
stop. Okay, stop. Okay. The thing is, I tell them this is the you treat the the MiC talent apprenticeship program like med school.
Mm.
Nobody's going to give you a scalpel to be a surgeon if you don't know how to use it. So
Yeah, where to cut.
let's focus. Let's focus on
Yeah.
the fundamentals before you become a specialist. Pen testing is a specialist aspect of things. You know,
Yeah.
there are several aspects. You can't be a SOC 2 if you've never been a SOC 1. You
Yep.
can't do network defense, if you don't know what a firewall is. All of
Yep.
these types of things that individuals that they're watching on YouTube or social media that's telling them you can get a job in 30 days. Yeah, no, you can't.
Hmm.
There is a certain level of ambition
Hmm.
and education that you have to
Hmm.
take, but you just can't. I can't make you a pen tester if you don't actually know how to defend a network. If you don't know what
Yeah.
a firewall is, yeah, no. If you don't know what a CASB is, if you don't
Yep.
know what an IDS is, if you don't know what those terms mean, then you don't have any idea what you're doing in the pen testing capacity.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you 100% because you have to have those fundamentals. My big thing is as long as you have those fundamentals and you have the desire to learn, we can teach you. As long as you have that desire to learn and those fundamentals to build off of, right? Because from a technical perspective, we can get you the resources. I can teach you myself. I got somebody on the team that can teach you whatever it is. We'll figure it out. But you have to have that base. We can't just walk you off the street and expect you to be a pen tester or a SOC analyst, and we're going to put you on the night shifts alone. That's not going to happen. But as long as you have those fundamentals and you can learn and you want to learn, because I can't teach you to want to learn. I can't motivate you. That's between you and you. So yeah, agree 100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what we're doing. We're building
Yeah.
a community of folks that are helping each other grow and learn. And Mass Mutual is a great partner. Mass Mutual has
Yeah.
hired a few folks,
Yep.
from the MiC community. And it's important that, as we develop and continue to foster these relationships with organizations like Mass Mutual, that we understand that our expectation is for
Yeah.
us to now hire the individuals from the community to be in these roles and take a chance
Yeah.
on them. And Mass
Yeah.
Mutual is good for picking off our leaders. They're real good for that. And so
Yeah.
that's awesome, and that's awesome. And I commend you in being a member of the board.
Yeah.
Before we go, tell us why you wanted to be a board member for minorities in cybersecurity.
Yeah, again, I want to get more exposure to being a board member, right, from a development standpoint, but I wanted to give back, right? And I think this is a way to give back in a different way and kind of be part of the decision-making process, or at least providing input there. Again, I think I started out as a trainer first, and that I had a really great experience with that. Really enjoyed the conversation, of that first session, and have enjoyed all the other conversations and sessions that I've had since then, and looking forward to the one tomorrow as well. But being able to sit on the board, have discussions with yourself and the other board members, being part of the planning for the MiC annual conference coming up in a couple weeks, and how great the last one was. It's a different experience, right? And we touched on a little bit about being the only. I'm not the only here, and no one is, right? Whether we look alike or not, we have that same mindset. We've been through similar experiences, and so. And for those of you that are going to the conference in a couple weeks, you'll see it and you'll feel it. It's just different, right? It's I can't really explain it. I'm not going to do it justice, but when you're there, you'll just understand it's different from being at a RSA or FSI SAC or any of these other conferences, right? Because you feel home. That's the best way I can do. You feel home, right? You're just around your brothers, your sisters, and you'll see that. Just wait and you'll see it.
Yeah. And you feel it, and thank you. Thank you. It does my heart good to hear you say that, because that
Yeah,
is what we are here to do. And
yeah,
thank you all. I don't see any more questions. I don't see any questions on YouTube. So we're gonna call it a wrap. We are,
cool,
thank you so much, so much, so much, Anthony, for
absolutely.
participating and coming and doing this fireside chat with us. I will see you in a couple of weeks, buddy. I'm
Yeah,
actually going out to California. I'm going to LA tomorrow.
okay,
College visits for my daughter. What is that about?
nice, crazy. Good luck.
I know, I
Scary
know.
is what
Thank you so much.
it is.
And thank you all that are out there. Please, 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 if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe. If you're local and you're on the Zoom call, please go out to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. We have a lot of content out there. Thank you so much. Thank you for your for your time this evening, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for having me.
All right.